did last time. So if any of you have done it already, just bear with me and follow me through it. I don't want to patronise anybody by going over the same ground, but I also don't want to miss anything out. So we're going to start. Is everybody opened a UE4 project? I think I got round to everybody. Is everybody in? Say no if you're not. Right, I'm going to assume everybody's ready to go. Okay. Basically, the game jam is obviously on UE4, and that's what we use at the studio where I work at as well. So that's why I'm going to be showing you UE4 stuff as well. And what I wanted to say to the music production students is that UE4 is now a free engine. So you can go home and download this tonight, or if you've got your laptop on you and it will support it, you can download it right now. So do follow the tutorial through, because it is something that you're going to be able to access yourself. And also, if you have the inclination, you can even start making your own game, or at least an audio game, with the knowledge that I'm going to give you. So, actually, while we're on it, UE4, as well as being free, has now got £30. I don't know if anybody has an account with it already in here, but they've actually given everybody $30, to spend in the wallet. So, if you don't know how to build game assets, if you're a music student, you can download things now like trees and walls and houses and things like that. If you're one of the game students and you don't know how to make sounds, you can now download sounds and things, and you've got some money to spend there. So I'd have a look at those as well. Okay, can we see this screen at all? No, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. Right, so you should be able to, whichever one you're closest to, see one of the screens up here. I'm going to show you the basics of how to put a sound that you have into your world. If anyone has any questions at any point about what I'm doing now, just shout out, no need to raise your hand. And let's get started. So, does anybody know how to import a sound into UE4 already? Even the ones that I taught this to last time. Okay. You do know. Okay, so basically, in your content browser, under the heading Game, you have a section called Audio. That's all we're going to be working in today. So you don't need to know anything else other than that. For the music students, it's on the very left-hand side, if you can see the screen. You should have a panel open here. And this is basically where you start to implement things into your world, and it'll always be here. So under the heading Game, we've got Audio, and when I clicked on that, I've already got a sound there in Audio. If you would like to add your own sound into the engine, all you need to do is right-click anywhere in the space, and then import to Game Audio. And it's as simple as going on your iTunes and saying I want a new song in it that's on your desktop, and you say I want to import it, and you put it in. That's exactly what you do with this. And all the sounds that are in there or on your computer will automatically appear in this space, just like this WAV that we have here. And it doesn't get any more complicated than that. You tell it you want it to go there, and it goes there. We're going to use the sounds in the engine actually for this one though. Okay, so to put a piece of audio into your world, you click on it and drag it and let go. That's it. That audio is now in the world, and it will play generically across the world the second you go up to it. I've shown them, I went around individually at first. Is anyone not clear on the basic navigation? I did try and go around at first. So if you hold down the right button, you can look around as if you're a point camera in the engine. If you hold down the left mouse, you can move forward and backwards throughout the world while turning. And if you hold down both buttons at once, you can move up and down. Is everybody okay with that? Brilliant, let's move on. So, I now have a sound in my world. The first thing I want to do with the sound is hear it. Now, I'm going to use the one that I've already got in there because I know what it is. So this little guy here, this is my sound node, and I can't hear it. There are a couple of reasons why this is, and I'm going to go through honestly, the most basic of them. One, are your speakers turned up? If they are, which these are, and I know Pete had them coming through before, then the only reason you wouldn't be able to hear it is in settings, which is along your top panel here. Can everybody see? If at any point somebody doesn't know, don't get lost and left behind, just shout out, I don't know where it is, give it to Marius. There's a little slider down below called volume on real-time audio, and if we turn that up, suddenly we've got audio in the world. This is one of the most basic things that happens when I put a piece of audio in and it's not playing. If I haven't gone here, that's usually why it is. It's literally, is it switched on at the wall? So, now we have a piece of audio playing and it's a fireplace. And Pete's even put some fire there for us to help sell the illusion. So it's looking good. Now, if I walked away from a fireplace in the real world, what would happen to the sound? It would get lower. It'd get quieter in volume. Now, because this is a digital engine, it's not real life, so we have to try and emulate the fact that this sound is getting quieter. And I have shown some of you this before, so I'm going to do it really quickly. But again, if you have any questions, just stop me at any point. If everybody clicks on their sound for me, you should see a little grid, a little sphere appear around it, okay? Are we all there? And now on the right hand side of the screen, you have a little panel called Details, which is here. And that, exactly as it sounds, is every detail you need about this sound in your world. Is everyone following? Okay, yeah, go on. You don't have the sphere. Okay. Clicked on it. This sound is put in. It'll give you the same sound as me. Does anybody not have the sphere? So we've got a few people there. Just so I can point to it so you can all see. There's a little setting on the side called override attenuation. Okay. Click that box and you see it here. You have to tell it to attenuate. Can anybody tell me what attenuation is? Shout up if you know what it is. It's something's effect over distance, okay? So in this case, it's the effect of the volume over distance. So what we're going to do, if everybody has the sphere, is we're going to tell our sound where it's going to be heard from, depending on where the player is. And the player is literally wherever you're walking or moving the camera at the time, and the effect will move down with you. So if you can copy me on this, you're going to see in the attenuation box a one called radius. If you don't see it, shout up. I'm circling it on the screen now. Everybody got it? You got it, yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so if you watch my screen, if I drag this left and right, I'm actually making the sphere smaller and bigger, okay? Now what this does is that tells me that within the size that I'm making, my sound is going to be at full volume, okay? And it's the radius of the sound that's going to play. So if you make a room that's I don't know, 4 meters wide, then you obviously want your sound to fill that room. So you're going to make it as big as the room, 4 meters wide, whatever it looks like in here. So for example, if I pushed it into one of these little alcoves, like so, I want my sound to fill that room. I'm not going to go too deeply into different shapes of things you can, but you can have a square sound, believe it or not. But for this exercise, I'm literally going to make this sound a little bit bigger than the room itself, And now I know that if I go into that room, I'll fly in there now for you, I can hear that sound at its full volume anywhere in this room. Is everybody on board with that? Okay, now for the actual effect of attenuation, if you look at the tab below it, it's called fall off. Now there's actually another sphere outside of this that some of you might not be able to see because it's absolutely huge. If I bring that right into the size of the other one, now you can see them both. Now, can anybody hear that the sound's now stopped? Can you tell me why that might be? Yeah, so basically the player is now outside the fall off, and the fall off is saying to the sound, after this point I don't want you to play anymore. So if you're outside sphere, you can't hear any audio. If you're inside the sphere, you hear it at full volume. Sorry. So to make this sound realistic, as realistic as it can be, because pretty much all audio in a game is trying to lie to somebody enough for them to believe what this sound is doing. We're going to make the distance between the radius and the fall off large, and then as the player walks away from the sound source, there's going to be a linear line basically of fall off that says the volume literally just turns down. And we do that literally by making the fall off wider, and if you watch the screen, you see it getting bigger? Okay, so now if I'm inside the radius, that's at full volume. The second I step outside of it, so I'll inch my way out, now because I'm close to the radius, it's still pretty much full volume, but the further away I get, it gets quieter, quieter and quieter, and the second I step outside of it, it cuts off completely. So if you're trying to fill an entire room with something, you have to make it fill that volume of the room. So if you guys, when you're game jamming together and somebody says to you, I need environmental sounds, and one of you takes the responsibility of putting them in, they will sound realistic or non-realistic just because of this act. It's not good enough to make a great sound. If you don't put it in right, it's not going to be believable. And an example of that is, I'll just give you a very quick one. So imagine there's a tiny little fireplace in the corner of this room that I've got over. I'll do it at the very end of the map because I've already set some examples up for you. Everyone can see this, yeah? So use your imaginations, and we'll say that there's a little furnace right here in the corner of the room. Now obviously if you're standing next to the furnace, you can hear it. If you walk away from it, that's unacceptable, because if I look back I can still see it. Having said that, if there are many furnaces around the place and you have a massive volume, if you say to yourself, realistically, if I walked away from this furnace, I would be able to hear it for 30 meters. In the real world, that might be the case. But imagine there are now 10 furnaces, and you want to be able to walk up to all of them, and for 30 meters back, hear that there's a furnace. You now have 10 different sounds all playing over each other at the exact same time. And to any of the music students, what happens if you have the same sound playing at the same time through both speakers? What's that? You get phase. So, this is where the next part comes in. Imagine I have two sounds, and they both have to be there. There's no getting around this. You've tried it with just one and it sounded rubbish, and you absolutely have to have these two sounds in. Let's make them both really big. Okay. What I've done is I've held down the Alt key before I selected it, and I dragged it across, and it makes a duplicate of that sound. Don't know if any of you want to do that yet. Yep, there we go. It's a quick workflow. Instead of keeping on re-importing sounds and doing all the fall-offs, if you've got the fall-off right, you can literally just duplicate the sound around. Yeah, hold down Alt, before you actually click it, otherwise you just miss. Tell me if you haven't got it anymore. Has everyone got that? So now I have two of the exact same sound, and the speakers are basically trying to play the exact same sound twice over itself. It's like basically trying to cancel itself out. Sometimes they put features in that stop it happening, but let's see if it will work with these. Probably not actually the best sound to demonstrate that, is it? But there you'll get phasing. I'm going to show you how to get rid of it. Okay. Where are we? So, on the right hand side again, where we did the radius of the attenuation, you have two other ones, and these are really, really important for making your audio sound good. You've got your volume. Everybody see it? Tell me if you can't. On the right hand side in your details again, every detail will always be there, so it's a really handy panel. Yeah? Everyone's got their volume, and below it you've got something called a pitch multiplier. And that literally does what it says on the tin. It makes the pitch higher or makes the pitch lower. And if you have two sounds that are identical and they're just phasing and it's sounding horrible, you can realistically still sound the same. Drag it down just a little, and I'll show you the difference between them actually. I'll make one extreme. I'm going to take one right up and one right down, okay? I'll move them away from each other so that we can hear them. Okay, so this is the one that's high pitch if I get closer. This is the one that's low pitch. But they're still the same sound, okay? Now we've completely eradicated phasing, and that's all within Engine, so you don't even need to go back to your sounds. Right. I wonder whether I should move on to triggering now. No, I'll do more basics with sound. Are you okay there? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to show you another little trick now. But you basically don't want a lot of sounds in the engine playing all at the same time. You can normally handle about 8 sounds, maybe 10 all at the same time, but if you start to go above that, then you're going to start to have problems and the engine won't handle it. And you might be thinking to yourself that you might never really need that many sounds, but what people don't realise is that when you have a fireplace going and a piece of music going in the game, and then a character talking, and then while that's happening you've got the wind from outside realistically still sounding, the player's walking and his footsteps playing every few seconds, and he needs to fire his gun, every single one of those is a sound. So we're always trying to be as efficient with this as we can. So, without having loads of sounds playing, I'm going to show you how to realistically make this sound still sound out over here without it covering the whole place. Because if I wanted to do that, let me show you. Look what happens if I make this sound realistic on its own. I'll take the radius up. So realistically, if I was there, I'd be able to hear it at full volume. But if it was a loud sound, I'd be able to hear it still in the same room, surely. Because there's not one person who could stand over in the corner of that room and talk loudly and not be heard from that corner. So the sound has to travel realistically like that. But if I just make the sound do that itself, watch this. I'll come over here to show you. If I take the fall off up, now I'll even be sparing with it, I'll bring it back here. Now that completely covers the room, doesn't it? Can you see it's outside? So now if I'm in this room, I can hear that sound wherever I go. But this is a game world, and we're not always just in one room. There might be something on the other side of this wall. And now I've got a fireplace in it. So I've got another part of the world here that's got a fireplace stuck in it, and there's nothing I can do about it. And the player's going to be able to hear that, and now we're in a jungle part of the world. And there's not just a random fireplace in the jungle. So, this is a little cheat, but it's something that's needed a lot. We're going to say that the player can never walk through this corner, so there's no point in putting a sound in the corner. The player can realistically walk to here, so that's where the sound starts. So now we're saving a little bit of space just by putting the sound where the player can actually go. realistically you'd put it right up where the fire is, but they can't walk into the fire, so let's not bother, it's just wasted space. Everybody following so far? So now I'm going to make this sound tiny, and I'm going to say that when I'm in this space, I can hear the fire to its fullest. Okay? Here I am. I'm at the fireplace. And now if I'm on the other side, ta-da! Okay? So now you can have your jungle without a fireplace just miraculously playing in it. But now we've got the problem of I can't hear it over this side of the room. How do you think we can get away from that? I'll let anybody suggest, because good audio design as well is about problem solving, because not every room is square. Somebody might give you a rectangular room, or might give you an L shape or a bendy S, and you've got to try and figure these things out yourself. So can anybody give me a solution of being able to now hear that sound even though it's tiny?
Can you change the shapes?
You can change the shapes, but I want you to try and do it without, if that's alright. Go for it. Talk loudly as well. If I increase the volume of the sound, what's going to happen outside it? It's going to fade out and you won't hear it. But when I go in, it'll be louder. So that's not gonna work, sadly. Anybody? Come on, think outside the box. Could be a hint, actually. Yeah, go for it. Are you going to make me have to show you? Okay. This is cheating, but I'm going to show you the way we do it. All I'm going to do now is duplicate the sound, and this is why I showed you about how to do the pitch, because this is something you will have to do. Duplicate the sound. There you go. Drag it away and make a bigger circle. Yeah. Close to it. And now expand that up to the wall. And once again, you don't have a fireplace outside, but if you're in here and you walk out, you now have extended sound, but sound needs to get quieter as it goes. So what am I going to do to this sound? Sorry? I could lower the... Actually, that's a good one. I'll mention that after, but that's not the right answer. But that is a very handy thing. Nope, I'm literally going to turn the volume down. Volume is a huge tool in the engine. It's just going to sell the lie that as I'm getting further away, it's getting quieter, because I'm literally going to turn it down. And I don't want to turn it down too much, because I want it to feel like it's a fall-off. So I'm literally going to turn it down. I've turned it down to about 59 there. I don't work in round numbers. Everyone in my studio works in round numbers and they type in round numbers. But I literally do it by ear or by sight. I just drag it down. So if you want to use your method, that's fine, but that's how I do it. Now, as I get further away, it gets slightly quieter. Go for it. Yeah. Take it up 2, but it will never take up more than 2. And this is my point. If I leave this sound realistically over this entire space, it will always be taking up that entire space. Okay? And if I go inside this room and I tell my sound, there are ways to tell the sound not to make any noise. Okay? But if I do that and I tell it not to make any noise, the engine tells the player that it's quiet, but it's still trying to make the noise. It's just doing it with the volume down. So it's still actually doing the act, and you're still actually using up memory, and you're still actually playing 2 sounds even though you can't hear it. But if I make a series, and by the way, in here you might want brand new sounds. You might want 3 washing machines, a massive set piece where people are having a conversation and other sounds. And although now you can't hear this fire in the room, it's still in there and the engine knows it's there. So we use this lie to literally, I'll give an exact example of that now. So I make loads of small ones, okay? Drag them around. This is actually a very tight space, and I'm doing an extreme example of this. But basically, if I walk this corridor, you'd have to have them a bit closer together than that. Let's make the radius up a little. Everyone see what I'm doing and understand it, yeah? Shout out if you don't. So now, if I follow this trail here, I can still hear that sound that's over there, over here. And I've only ever overlapped 2 sounds at a time. Because I'm gonna, so you can see my finger. When I'm on this guy here, and I can hear that and the engine's playing it, I can also hear this guy, and it's ready to fade out. And as I leave it, this guy turns off, and this guy turns on. And it's masked because I'm always hearing this guy. And then the same again, as I walk to this guy turns on and that turns off. And it's masked because you're always hearing that guy. So there's only ever 2 sounds playing when I'm covering this whole distance. And I can chain that all the way down the world, turning it down as much as I want each time. The maximum I'll ever have is 2 sounds playing, and hopefully I'll always just have 1. Now I can go in this room, and I'm not being as economic as I can with that, but there's a tiny little bit of the corner there where you might just pick up the sound. It's going to be so quiet when you hear it. So you can be as tight as you can. So basically I've got this whole area covered, and if I go into this room I don't have any sound whatsoever. Now, if somebody does give you this world where they say, I've got a machine here, a machine there, and a machine there, and they're all doing this, and you need to put on everything, and you need to start being really, really economical with sound in this way. Someone gives you a massive cave, and there's not a lot going on. There's no electricity, there's no lighting, and nothing like that in the cave. You've got waterfall or water dripping, and you've got a load of reverb on it. That one sound pretty much sums up that whole cave because it's got reverb. And we've done things like that. Okay, go for it.
Why is there like that?
It's not just that there was processing power. Audio is actually, we have a lot of freedom now compared to what there was. If you look at the old style games, they didn't write music in an 8-bit style because it sounded cool, they wrote it because that was all that was there. And it sounds cool now because it was that. But we have a lot of freedom now with the sounds. We can have high quality sounds as well in games. But there are still limitations. But even, it goes across the board in any kind of game engine making anything. We've got a massive level in the game. And although in our game Ether 1, and even though we're now doing it on a new console, and we've got all this power, suddenly we think, oh, we can have this, we can have that, we can have that. We put it all in, and something just tanks, and we go, right, what do we need to do? So you're still being like economical. Sound is no different. If you can put it in as much as you want, put it everywhere at first, the second it tanks out, you'll have to go back to it and figure out what's wrong. You might as well just learn to do it the right way and be like, oh. But the point being, if I'm in a cave and I only need that one dripping water sound, that's a tough one. Yes, in Ether we did because I made a choice early on. Did anyone hear the question? Anyone hear the question there? So basically saying, if you had a room with a load of washing machines in it, instead of having 4 different washing machine sounds, why can't we just have one sound mixed to sound like there's 4 washing machines? If you're in a game where it's first person and the player can turn around freely like that, are the washing machines going to turn around in your head? Maybe, maybe not. In Ether we didn't do that, and I made a conscious decision that did some early experiments with the game, and we had the sea moving around your head and seagulls and everything, and I just didn't want it to be that way, and every single sound in the game is a stereo track that just plays and it plays headphones. The only thing that happens is when you get further away from it, it gets quieter and quieter, and we sell all of the sound at that volume. But if you're making another game where you want things to go around your head and you've got 4 things around you, they're all going to sound, if it's a stereo image in your head, they're not going to move, and the washing machine that's there is now here and you can't see it. But in a game like Ether, yeah, absolutely. I could just take, And we did it, in fact. We took big set pieces where we exceeded 10, 11 sounds. We said, right, is that staying? Is it final in the game? Yeah, I like that. Let's mix that. And then I would take all of those sounds back and I would make one track and mix them all into it. And then when it comes to hearing that scene, we just play one audio file. Yeah, go for it.
So that like 10 track limit or 8 track limit, is that like stereo tracks or mono tracks, or does it not matter?
It doesn't matter. And the difference between stereo and mono tracks in the engine, by the way, if you have a mono track, it can decide which ear it's playing it in. You'll normally find everything coming out of your left ear when you, for some reason, everything's mono when you use audio files. But in the engine, because it's a mono file, it can tell it to play in either ear. And then, say this guy is screeching and it's making a noise. As I'm walking around, the sound is literally panning through my headphones as I turn, and you know it's over there. If you're going to do that, you've got to be universal and do it across the entire game, otherwise things start sounding weird. Alternatively, if you use a stereo track, the track just plays. So try not to balance left, right really harshly if you're going to put a stereo track in. Because otherwise if you're walking around and hear something in your ear and it keeps following you around, what's going on? So you've got to try and keep things just as a very flat, that kind of sound if you're using a stereo track. You can use them. And I prefer to use them in it because I have more control over the sound on my end. So everyone gets this basic principle. Okay. Like I was saying before, if you're in a cave and you just want to have one sound going across the whole thing, that's absolutely fine because you're only going to use a couple of sounds in that kind of environment. So, I'm going to move on now, and it's going to get a lot more advanced with what we're doing with the sound. So if there's anything anybody wants me to ask me about this now, go for it because I'm about to run away. Everyone fine with this? Everyone understands what the radius is doing, what the fall off is doing, and where I can and can't hear the sound. Yeah? Great. Let's move on. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of these sounds. You can leave yours on or you can delete them. It's absolutely up to you, but for the purpose of what I need to do, I need to delete it. I'm going to move it back to this nice little fireplace that Pete's made for me. It's a nice little navigation tool there, by the way, that I just used. If you select your audio actor in the world and hold down the shift key, the camera follows you so you can take it wherever you want. There we go. So the sound is now neatly over the fire. And if you want, you can put it right down into the fire. You can put it above the fire. You can put it just right at eye level, ear level for the player. There are different reasons you would do that. Can anybody think of any? What would be beneficial to me having a sound there or a sound there? Think outside the box, come on. Nothing? Right. Elevation in a game level. Games aren't always just on a flat platform. So I might have a set of stairs, okay? And this set of stairs might go above, might start up the back of this, go up here, and then there might be a walkway right over the fire. Now, let's use two examples. Imagine there's a room above this, okay? And I don't want the fire to sound in it, but I want it to sound down here. Suddenly that seems very sensible because my room starts about here and now I haven't got a fire sound in it. Imagine there's a walkway going over it where the player can go and they're still in this room, it's just a walkway. Suddenly that seems like the logical answer because if I'm here I can hear the fire and if I go over this walkway I can hear the fire and I've only used one sound. Yeah? So again, it's just trying to be economical with the sound and trying to use as few as you can and make the player hear it everywhere they'll be able to hear it and not where they can't. And you need to be thinking about that kind of thing a lot. Okay, I'm going to make this sound huge for a moment. And I don't expect people to be following my next steps because you haven't got them set up and it takes a while to do. But what I would like to do, if I say write this down, please write it down because it's something... I've written a huge list of things that can go wrong and will go wrong because you haven't ticked a little box. And again, it's back to that, is it plugged in at the wall kind of thing. So I'm going to make the sound huge and cover this entire space. And I'm sorry it's crude, but this is basically my cave that I've made. and I want it to sound absolutely huge in there. So I'm going to make my sound fill the entire place. And you can see I've got a tiny little radius here. So I'm going to make that bigger. And now, if we're hearing fire, yeah? Actually, although you're seeing fire, this is something I've done with both groups of students in the past, just quickly using the multiplier, the pitch multiplier that we used before. That could be wind outside a room with dripping water. Yeah. That could be somebody frying some bacon. So one sound cue, one sound WAV, 3 different sounds. So if somebody asks you for a sound in their world, you can be really inventive with one sound as well. And obviously, if you have 3 sounds in the engine, your download speed for this game that you're going to play suddenly goes up because you've got more audio files in it. Think about syncing an iPod. If you have one song to sync, it takes what, like 10 seconds to sync it. If you have your entire library, it takes 10 days or whatever. So if you can reuse sounds, you can actually make your game, if it's an iPod game or something small, you can make your game now really tiny to download. So it's just another place you can save time and energy.
What do the numbers refer to? Are they the actual scaling?
Yeah, it's literally, it's the numbers on the side relate to the actual measurements of the world. So if you wanted to measure a distance in the world, it would give you a value. You might have a block or a building that's exactly 1,000 units wide. And if you knew that, you could just go to 1,000 here and actually scales it there. Oh, the pitch ones, sorry. It doesn't relate to anything other than what did it have instead of 140, yeah, let's try it at 145. It's just everything starts at 1. If it goes up to 2, you double it almost, but it doesn't stick to the scale. It doesn't stick to
the maximum resolution.
Yeah, you can take it up to, I mean, you can take it up to 2 down to 0, which is good because it used to be set at 1. But no, sadly, it doesn't reflect pitch in numbers. So if you're trying to go up in a Western scale, you might end up using quite bizarre numbers to do it. But it can be done. Okay, let me just check my volume's good, yeah. So I can now hear this sound anywhere across the world, yeah? Just try and keep it down, guys, unless so other people can hear, please. Unless you need to ask a question, then just call out. So we can hear anywhere across the world with this sound. I'm going to press play on this now, and you can all do this as well, but you might not be able to hear it unless you've got headphones. I'll save what I've done to you, just in case. Yes, don't worry about that. So, this is me actually running around the world now, and I get to test what I've made. Run up to the fireplace. Perfect. Run away from it. And there you go. And realistically, you guys are far away so you can't hear this. I've got a little bit of the sound in my ear, but not a lot of it. It's just a realistic fall off, and we're happy with that. So we're going to say, other than me turning the volume up a little if I can so you can hear it. So we're going to say, let's put a pin in that and that's done. We're happy with our sound, okay? We're going to move away from this completely. And we're going to look at smaller spaces. And I'll give you an example why. I've set this entire room up to sound as if it's a massive cave, okay? If I fire my weapon, you'll hear that. Yeah. So, how do you think I've done that? Because the game doesn't know that it's a big space, so I had to tell it. Yep. So there's something called a reverb volume, okay? Well, it used to be called a reverb volume, actually. Now they've changed the name on this engine. It's called an audio volume. And there's just a big mess outside the world, basically, and unless you know what they are, it can get a bit confusing, especially when you've got a big game on the go. So I've made it bigger than all the others just so we can see. Okay, so I've selected this audio volume, Where do people think all the details for that are going to be? It's a trick question. Anyone? In the details panel, to the right hand side, where all the details for everything are, all the time, okay? So the second you click on an actor in the world, they'll always be in the same place. So on this right hand side, can everybody see that, yeah? Now, we have all of the details and information about this reverb volume, and they're completely different from the audio actor because we're looking at a different thing. I'm going to tell you only what you need to know here, because there's a lot to go through. So, there's a little tab called reverb, and then in that there's a little tab called settings. Can you see me expanding that, everybody? Say no if you can't find it, and I'll stop. You not found it?
Yeah, I can't get. I didn't get into the audio volume here.
Oh, actually, very good point. I already have it set up. You guys actually need to put one in the world. So let's show you how to do that. Right. In your on the very left-hand side of the screen here. Let's try and move that so you can see it. Can everybody see here this panel? Yeah. You should have a panel called volumes. Just tell me if you haven't got it. Okay, I'm going to move forward. The very first one we see there is called an audio volume. Has everyone got it? Okay, the same way as you did it before, click it and drop it into the world. Don't worry, it's okay. Yeah, that's fine. So, so you're in. If you have an older version of the engine, you might not actually have access to this, or so I'm being told. So if somebody on the screen next to you has it, just follow by watching on the screen. That's fine, don't worry. Okay guys, so you move your audio volume in the exact same way as you moved your sound actor, just using the arrows here, okay? Yeah, everyone ready with that? Okay, I'm going to show you another little shortcut on how to adjust something now. If you press spacebar, write this down, because this is something you'll wonder how it was done. No, you know. If I press spacebar, I literally toggle through a bunch of options. It's the same with sound actors. It's the same with everything in the world. Okay. If you drag it in, you can toggle through it. That's it. The arrows let you move it about any way you want. You can select 2 at a time to move it in multi directions. Huh? You can use those if you want. I'm just going to teach people basic movement. Yeah. Okay. If I press the space bar, from there I've got this guy, and this is a rotation tool. And again, grab it, start moving it. Yeah. So say you've got a room that's a bizarre shape and you need your box to fit that room, you've got all the tools to do it, and it will go anyway. Press it one last time, and this is just what it toggles through. This is a scaling tool. Everyone who works on UE4 will already know this from making their levels. Just for the audio guys, this is how we scale. As easy as that. Click it, move your mouse. Yep. Now, I want anybody who has got one of these volumes in the world to give it a try. Tell me if you're having any problems with it at all. So imagine that the space that you want it to fill is twice as big as it is, and we're literally going to make a nice big cube, or close enough, and then drag it into our space. Has everyone got that? Okay. Everybody set up? Yeah? You're good. Right, so I'm going to delete mine, but you keep yours, because I already have some set up in the world. Okay. Now this is my one here, and I've put this across my entire scene, because I want my entire scene to sound like it's a cave. And all I'm going to do is on the details panel on the right, where all the details are all the time, as long as you've got something selected, you have something called reverb, which is obviously what we need. Settings, yeah, expand that. And then we have something called reverb effect, and all of yours will be completely blank. It'll either say nothing or it will say default, yeah? Literally, just click it. That's not good. Go to the view options if you haven't got anything. Yeah, and show engine content. Has everyone got that? I'll come around and get it for you if you haven't. So don't say you have if you haven't. Just go for it. You not got it? It's fine. So basically, there are a load of default things that are in the engine for you to use. You can make your own as well.
Yeah, I know, it's basically Britain. All you ever use is the same everything. They just make new buildings and then...
Scroll up. It's like Assassin's Creed Chronicles.
Oh, that one, yeah. It's still bad for them just doing grabbing the Uclan.
So that's something that you should probably all write down, okay? Because it's one of those things that if you click on the reverbs and they're not there, you sat twiddling your thumbs wondering why they're not there. And this is something that I spent about an hour on the first time it happened to me, because I was new to the engine too, and I had to learn that they were there. So if the reverb isn't there, show engine content, okay, in the view options. Please write that down, because it is one of the things that will make you stuck on a project for an hour or two, and then you'll kick yourself and you've wasted a lot of time. So now that we have all of these sounds, select one. Mine's quite a large environment, so what do you think I'm going to want with that? Even the non-music students, just what do you think you're going to want? Quite a big echoey environment. So it's named them. It's got a bit of a mixture of language here, because it's got things like plates, which are styles of reverbs, but it's also got places. So I've got one there called a mine. I've got one called a hallway, I've got forest, concert hall, cave hall, bathroom, auditorium, alleyway. So whatever the world you're in, if somebody's giving you an alleyway, hopefully you'll have something there. If somebody gives you a really bizarre one like kitchen and it's not on there, just imagine that a kitchen is, you know, slightly bigger than a big bathroom, and just use a bathroom or a hallway or something like that. The hallway doesn't have to be used for a hallway. An auditorium doesn't have to be used for an auditorium. You're just trying to sell the idea, and they're trying to make it easier for you. But my place is big, so I've selected auditorium. And I've got that in there if everybody can see, yeah? Go for it. You will, yep. Absolutely, yeah. You can use more than one reverb in your level, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. But if I'm in this place, I want it to sound huge, okay, while I'm in there. And let me give you a little example. If I walk in here, and I don't want it to sound big in here, and I don't want it to sound big in here, and all the other ones, what I could do is I could tailor the shape of my reverb volume. Start off as a little bit of a square here, then extend it out, and then make a T-shape there, and then drag it up, and then make another point and drag the top up, and I can make my reverb the exact same shape through it. It took me a long time. The only reason I do it is if there was a lot of stuff outside that I needed to do it. So what I've done is I've just made a massive box, and it sounds great inside there, but now inside the little rooms, I'm going to give them their own little reverb volume. But I'm going to finish setting up the actual reverb on this first. You have a reverb volume. Believe it or not, that doesn't make your sound louder or quieter. what it does is it says the effect on this sound is going to be a lot louder in the mix or not in the mix or anywhere in between. All the music students will get that from using reverbs. I'm using them really widely here, but it's always nice to be as subtle as you can with them. But I'm just going to show you a more overblown version. Fade time. Can anybody tell me what that might be? I hope somebody can with this one. Go for it. It's what, sorry? It's fade time is literally, I make a sound in this room. Can everybody hear it reverbing off the walls? You should be able to. Yeah? Everyone can hear that. There's a lot of bodies in this room absorbing that sound, and the only place it's echoing off is the walls around us, and we're hearing that after the sound. Imagine this room was 20 times wider than it is. I do that really loud, and it takes sound, the time it takes sound to travel, all the way to a wall 20 times bigger than this room, and then it comes back to us, and we hear it later, and it goes. So for all the music students, for all the game development students, that's what your reverb is doing. It's saying if I'm in this massive room, this sound is going to take me ages to hear it, like because the walls are really far away by the time it gets back to me, and it makes this effect. Yeah, sounds like a big room, doesn't it? Does anybody not think it does? Everyone's on the same page. Great. Now listen to this. I go into this little alleyway. What's happened? What's happened to the sound? Come on. It's what? It's... yeah, nowhere near as much. The sound is really short because the walls are really close to me and the sound is literally reacting the second I do it off the walls next to me. So I shoot. And now, immersion-wise, the player knows they're in a small room just because of their ears. You could play this game with your eyes closed and know what kind of size space you're in just from what you're hearing. Which is why if you don't use reverb volumes nicely, you can create this kind of disparity between the world you're hearing and the world that you're seeing. So I'm going to shoot on my way out here. Short sound. Step outside into this huge cave. Yeah. Now we're suddenly in a big cave. Can anybody... let me just check it works. I might need to set that up better. Okay, so let me show you how I've achieved that. And again, you can all do this as a practice on the reverb volumes you have. But if you select your volume, there's another panel called Ambient Zone Settings. I'm circling it now, okay? Real good? Okay, within that panel, you have a volume that is your exterior volume. And that literally means the sound, I am inside the room. Even if you're not, you have to imagine that when you're using these volumes that you're stood inside it, okay? So the exterior volume literally means anything outside this room, that's the volume of it when I'm in it, okay? And the interior volume is the volume of anything inside this room when I'm outside it. So it's quite, you have to always think of yourself, if it's an exterior sound, you have to imagine you're in, and that's why it's exterior. If it's an interior sound, you're out, and that's why it's interior, okay? It's quite hard to get your head around, but you do get used to it. So what I'm going to do, sorry, go. Yeah, so sometimes if it's raining heavily outside and you're inside, you can hear the rain outside. But it certainly doesn't sound like it's raining inside. It sounds like it's raining outside. And that's because the building that you're in, or the tent that you're in, or whatever structure you're in, is muting the sound of that rain. Yeah. Well, we don't need to use the material for it. You literally grab your exterior volume, I hope everyone's got this open, and drag it down. Let's drag it down to 0. Well, just, you know what? I'm using a round number now, which I said I didn't do, but there you go. Suddenly we've got no sound. So this is what I was describing to everyone before. I'm inside this tiny little room. Let me have a run around in it. I'm inside this tiny little room, and it's telling me that that fireplace doesn't exist, okay? But it does exist. So what do you think I'm going to have to do? To make it believable that I've now walked away from it, and I'm in a smaller room, but it has to still exist. What do I do? Based on what I just did to the reverb volume. Anybody? Yeah, well, make it a little louder. Literally, like I said before, volume is your biggest tool in this game. So I'm going to say to myself, if I'm here, I can hear that. If I take a step that way, I can still hear it. The walls are just muting it a little. So I'm going to raise the volume up. So it goes a little quieter. Always make sure you save your work every now and then as well, because we do get crashes. So loud, quieter, okay? And that's how you sell the illusion of being inside a building. If you want it to sound like it's muffled, imagine you walk into a room, maybe you're making a game where you've got an asylum with a padded room, for example. Sound in there is not going to travel as well, it's going to be a lot more muffled. So you might be able to use something on the exact same panel, ambient zone settings. This is called exterior LPF, which I think it's low preference fade. Now if we drag that down, all of the high end, can you hear that? Audio guys will know what I'm talking about. All of the high end gets taken off it and you're just left with the low frequencies. And I've done an extreme example there again. Everyone hear that happening? I'm going to make the fade a lot longer so you can hear it better. And I won't do as much of it. So watch as I walk in here. Right, listen for this. Yeah. I tell you what, that does sound like rain actually. So there you go. You can have a house, as long as you don't need to go outside it, you can have a house where you can put a sound outside the reverb volume and sell the idea that outside it's raining. And you never had to make a rain sound because one of your music students made you a fire sound and you found a way to reuse it. Okay? So, basically, that's how you tell somebody that they're in a big room. That's how you tell somebody they're in a small room. That's how you make the transition of space to space within the world. Okay? And I've shown you basically that if I'm shooting in a big place versus standing in a small space, you can sell it to the player, and even the sounds outside that I'm not controlling, you can control those just by stepping into another little area. Okay. Right, now what I do need to do is I need to make sure that everybody is 100% on how I did it and why, because I need to go over a list of tick boxes and silly things that will go wrong. Okay. So any questions you have whatsoever about anything I just did, I need them now. Is everybody could recreate that scene? Where do you get reverb volumes from? Anybody? The volumes tab, okay, which is at the top left. So that's something you need to write down now. I'll also make a list of things that we can add to this video as well, so that you do have a list to go through. Sorry, go for it. So the answer is no, because your game is whatever you want it to be, and your rules are whatever you make them. If you're following a standard, kind of industry standard, this is what it should sound like. The rule is basically, if you do it for one, you need to do it for all of them. Otherwise, you're just coming across inconsistencies in the world. But it's the same with everything. And that goes to file quality. If you're going to make some audio files, make them all the same quality so that you don't go into a room and hear some really nice audio and then go into another one, it's really low resolution. You're like, wait, what's going on here? If you're doing something, you're doing it because you've chosen to do it across the board. If you do it once here and there, you're going to really start to sound like something's going wrong in the world. Which is why I got away with not putting anything around your ears in the game, okay? Because I chose something, I stuck with it throughout the entire game. So, you've all written down where to get audio volumes from. How do you plug a reverb into it? I'm not moving on until people answer me because I need to know that you know. Anybody? Go for it. Say it again louder, sorry. You do. So, honestly, if I ask you one of these questions, I want you to pretty much all to think of this first place. Everything is in the details panel on the right, okay? So how do you put a reverb in? You go to the details panel once you've selected it, and you click reverb, and that's it. And your reverbs are there. If the reverbs aren't there, you all wrote it down on your pads of paper like I told you to earlier. Show engine content, and they'll all just literally appear. Okay. Okay, brilliant. So, how do we make it sound like there's a loud sound outside of a reverb volume and a quiet sound inside? It's all in your details panel once you've selected your reverb volume, if anyone needs to click on it and see. In what, sorry?
Ambient zone.
In your ambient zone, yep.
Exterior volume.
Exterior volume. So it's really straightforward. Any question that you have, instantly go to the details panel because it has all of your details there. So if you select what you want to edit, and you have an exterior volume, so if you want to make it sound loud on the exterior, we're going to put the volume up, yeah? Yeah? If you're going to want it to sound quiet, you're going to put your exterior volume down. Okay, how do we put a sound into the engine? I'm just going over old things first. I want to make sure everyone's on board. Into the engine, into the game engine, not into the world. Yeah. On the left-hand side, the content browser is all of the content. I'm just re-going over this. In audio, right-click and import. Yeah. How do we put a sound from the content browser into the world? Just drag it and drop it. So it's really straightforward, and the reason I'm going over it all again is because they're quite easy methods to do, but there are a lot of them. And I do want people to write them down now so that when they start pairing up with people or they're doing their project, they have it for themselves to go to immediately. Because if you don't start using this quickly, you'll lose some of the knowledge. What I will do though is I will write some of this down, Phil, and I'll write down these big points. And we will eventually have it for you all to look at the video and see these things. But if that takes 2 days, if that takes a week to get that all done, I don't want people sat there twiddling their thumbs. You've got to use it now, because this is it doesn't actually get much more advanced than this. Okay, so this is how the pro games make their games sound pro. And you now all know how to do that in basic steps. I have actually got quite a few more tutorials on here that are examples, but I kind of feel like they're going to get the newest stuff is going to get lost when I start showing you that, you know. So what I will show you, I need you to write these down now. I absolutely need you to, because this is why your audio won't sound the second you try this out. And I'm going to test you a little bit with it as well. So, first checklist, there's no sound coming out. Is it plugged in at the wall? Okay. Second one, are your speaker volumes up or your PC volumes up? I know it sounds silly, write it down, because you might be looking for something in the engine and it's something that's silly. I know I'm being patronising, but you have to write it down. I can see some people doing it. Right, next one. Once those are both done, this is the in-engine one. Settings at the very top here, okay? Do you remember what's in there? Yeah, volume slider. So once all those three things are done, that's when you can say you have a problem. Otherwise, it's literally somebody will come over and go, have you switched your speakers on? And they'll tuck you on the ear and say, right, don't waste my time. Okay. So, are your speakers up? Is your audio Is your audio on your computer up? Yes. If so, settings, drag your audio up. Okay? If a sound, this again, you need to write these down. If a sound starts to play and then just suddenly stops, okay, that's something called looping. I know this is, to the music guys, this is unpatronising, but if you double click this WAV here, this is the guy that we dragged in, yeah? Yeah? I'm going to give you a quick example. If I go to my settings and drag my volume down, this is what happens. So that's you sat there wondering why it doesn't work, okay? And this is you with the volume up, eventually, realizing how it works. Okay, so this sound is a short one-off, yeah? So you only expect it to play once. Yeah? Okay, if I double-click that, there's this little guy here, and this is just a nightmare, okay? Some sounds you want it, some sounds you don't. So you have to check. Is looping ticked? We don't want it looping, and it's not. But imagine we do want it looping. Let's just get rid of that completely. What that's doing is that's waiting for the sound to finish playing and immediately trigger it again. So somebody was telling me before, was it you, Will? You were saying you had a door in your game and the door just kept on closing over and over and over, the sound of it. It was looping. It's a little tick box. So write that down. Double click the WAV, is looping ticked. If you have a piece of music in your game and it's playing for a little while and then it just seems to stop, looping isn't ticked. Okay. Next one. Okay, attenuation. We went through all this before, so don't worry, I'm not going to go over it again. But we had to make that sphere appear, didn't we? Some people's computers didn't have it. How do we make attenuation appear? Click override attenuation. There's just a series of tick boxes that the second I leave here today and everyone tries to do this, they're going to come up against every single one of these. So somebody has to have written them all down so that we absolutely know, wait a minute, did I do the idiot check? You know, the basic things. Okay. Last but not least, this is horrible, and it would take me forever just to go through the ins and outs of why this happens, which is why I'm just giving you this cheat guide basically to why things don't work. So, if you double click your WAV again, where you have your looping, ticked, unticked, whatever it may be, you have a little guy down there under sound called sound class. Tell me if you don't see it. You've got it, yeah? Sometimes you have to expand these tabs to get these options. If you don't do this, everything I've shown you will be in vain and it's just a tick box, okay? This is our life, by the way, in the studio. This is someone has a problem and it's a tick box somewhere. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that there was a problem in the game that we were making recently and we were pulling our hair out trying to figure out what it was, and it was literally 2 days spent looking for it and it was a tick box. So this is absolutely necessary, okay? So you've got one called a sound class. Everyone see that? Okay. The little magnifying glass here does what you might think it does. It looks closer at what you're looking at, and it even finds it in the content browser. See this guy's lit up? I didn't have to type that in. I didn't have to search for it anywhere. I'll go somewhere else randomly now. The second I click this magnifying glass here, it takes me there. Saves me having to search for what might be going wrong. So if you have a sound class plugged in, literally just press the magnifying glass, it does all the work for you. Double click that now. Okay. Now you can see why this might be a bit of a minefield because there are a lot of different places to click. That's why I want you to write it down. You see one called properties? Has everyone followed the step? Properties. Right, can anybody... We're looking to make our sound reverb. Can anybody see the culprit? Just search through all the properties. Anybody see it? What is it? A little reverb with a tick box. Now I built this test scene while I was at work a few days ago, and then when I got here, for some reason it wouldn't update onto the new system, so I had to recreate this scene for you again today. And I was sitting here 10 minutes before I started pulling my hair out, going, why isn't it reverbing, why isn't it reverbing? And I had to go through my checklist, because it's not always on the top of your head, and it was that little guy, okay? So you do all that work, you set up your reverb volume, you plug a reverb into it, you tell the reverb how big to be, and you tell it where to be in the world. You tell the sound what volume you want it to be when you're in the reverb, and if you haven't ticked that little box, none of that makes any sense, okay? Right, that's the end of the little checklist. And unless anyone wants to specifically ask me about that, that's the end of the tutorial as well. If anyone has any questions whatsoever about anything, if it's about the game jam in general, you can ask me now. If it's about your specific project, ask me afterwards. Does anyone have any questions?